After World War II, the country of Germany had been divided up into four equal sections between the four Allied powers, these being the Soviet Union, the United States, England, and France. As time went on, however, tensions began to arise between the Western powers and the Soviet Union. This was a problem not only because it was major problems between large nations, but because the city of Berlin sat firmly within Soviet control. As time went on and tensions began to arise even further, the Soviets went so far as to block off all land transport of supplies to the Allied-controlled Western Berlin. The problem that was conceived to remedy this would be known as the Berlin Airlift. The Berlin Airlift is an important historical event because it showed the West would not abandon Berlin. It saved millions of lives, and it was a deciding moment of the Cold War. The plan to shut off all land supplies to West Berlin was not only to humiliate the West, but also to get rid of its influence within Eastern Germany as well. The West, not wanting to lose this sort of battle between the Soviet Union and the West, came up with the plan and the only plausible solution to this land blockage, which was to literally fly all of the supplies that West Berlin would need every day into West Germany. As calculations were crunched, however, it proved to be a little bit more of an impossible, or a seemingly impossible feat than was once thought. It was found out that about 4,000 tons of supplies would need to be flown in every single day to make this plan work. But the Allies did the only thing that they could do. They could not leave these people to starve and to fend for themselves. And so they worked out a plan to be able to fly 4,000 tons of supplies into West Berlin every single day. At the height of its efficiency, about one plane would land on the runways of West Berlin every 42 seconds. This is an insane amount of planes considering it was running all hours of the day. This plan ended up being a massive success and was a hard embarrassment to the Soviet Union, as its plan had completely failed and backfired. In fact, it had the exact opposite effect that they had intended, and the West gained a lot of support through its success of the Berlin Airlift. The airlift saved millions of lives. There were about 2 million people that were within West Berlin at the time of the airlift, and they were all saved from their fate of starvation. They were saved not only from the fate of death, but from a slow and painful death that hunger comes with. This was a beautiful thing, and it was of the largest, and it still is the largest humanitarian project to ever be conceived and lived out. It was beautiful not only for that, but because the weapons that were once used to try and destroy West Berlin, many of the planes, even bombing it at one point, were later used to bring in supplies so that the people of Berlin could survive. Not only this, but the German troops that were retired within West Berlin actually worked together with the Americans and the rest of the Western powers to build things like runways and supply networks throughout the city so that the people did not have to starve. The airlift was also a decisive moment in the Cold War. The blockage of supplies to West Berlin would later be known as the very first action of the Cold War. And while it was not a hot battle, meaning that it was not fought with lethal weapons, it was nonetheless a battle that was a decisive victory for the West. The airlift swayed public opinion firmly towards the west throughout the rest of the Cold War. And at one point at the time of the airlift going on, there were about 300,000 West Berliners that showed up to the Reichstag, which was kind of like a constitution, or not the constitution, but the Capitol building, sort of, to Berlin. And they showed up to protest Soviet rule over Berlin. In conclusion, the Berlin airlift is a very important historical event because it showed that the West was dedicated to West Berlin. It saved millions of lives, and it was also a very deciding moment of the Cold War. Without the airlift, we would most likely be looking at a different outcome, or maybe not outcome, but a different history of the Cold War as we know it. Possibly many events such as the dissolving of the Soviet Union, or the demolishing of the Berlin Wall in the 70s would possibly not have happened the exact way that they did in our history, and we would be seeing a different history without the airlift. Thank you. I'm just gonna